An 8-year-old girl's innocent yet profound question silenced the bustling town hall, leaving Donald Trump unexpectedly vulnerable as he shared a deeply personal story of faith, loss, and redemption. What followed moved every heart in the room. It was an evening unlike any other in the church fellowship hall in Shreveport, Louisiana, a space usually reserved for Sunday potlucks and Bible study. The soft hum of folding chairs scraping against the floor and murmured conversations filled the air, but tonight there was an undercurrent of anticipation. At the front of the room stood Donald Trump, his commanding presence filling the modest space. Known for his bold hand gestures and unmistakable orange complexion, Trump appeared unusually subdued that evening, perhaps sensing the gravity of the moment. The audience was a mix of families, retirees, and locals, eager to hear him speak. But one figure stood out, not because of her small size, but due to the quiet determination in her eyes. 8-year-old Lily, dressed in her best Sunday dress, clutched an old leather-bound Bible close to her chest. The cherished heirloom, passed down from her late grandmother, bore worn pages and faded gold lettering. Earlier that day, her mother had whispered, "You can ask him, but only if you're brave enough, and only if you truly mean it." Lily nodded, her heart racing, the question she had been rehearsing for weeks echoing in her mind. As Trump spoke about policies, achievements, and the future of America, the crowd responded politely, though without the fervor of his usual rallies. Meanwhile, Lily sat quietly, gripping the Bible tighter with each passing moment. When the floor opened for questions, adults eagerly lined up to address local issues and national concerns, or to praise his iconic red tie. Lily hesitated, shrinking into her seat, but her mother's subtle nudge gave her courage. With trembling legs and a pounding heart, Lily stood and joined the line. The room grew quieter as people noticed the small girl with the oversized Bible. By the time it was her turn, a hush had fallen over the crowd. Trump's expression softened as he addressed her. "And what's your question, young lady?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Lily swallowed hard, her knuckles white against the Bible, and asked, her voice shaking but resolute, "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" The room fell into profound silence. All eyes turned to Trump, the weight of her question palpable. For a man known for quick, confident answers, he paused. His gaze shifted between the girl and her Bible, and something in his expression changed. Before he could respond, the air seemed charged with emotion, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath. The air in the room grew heavy with anticipation, as if the collective heartbeat of the crowd was in sync. Every person leaned forward, eyes fixed on Donald Trump, whose silence felt deafening. For a man known for his sharp comebacks and unflappable confidence, this uncharacteristic pause was disarming. Trump's gaze lingered on Lily, her fragile frame illuminated by the room's lights. She clutched her Bible tighter, her question echoing like a whisper against the walls. Sincere, unchallenging, yet profoundly stirring. It was a query born from genuine curiosity, a child's yearning to understand something bigger than herself. The crowd remained utterly still, as though even the air itself was waiting for his answer. Trump finally raised a hand, as if steadying himself, and leaned into the podium. "That's a big question," he began, his voice uncharacteristically low and steady. "And it's not one I've always had the answer to." The crowd stirred slightly, surprised by his candor. This was not the polished rhetoric they had come to expect. Trump's usual bravado was gone, replaced by a rare vulnerability. He looked back at Lily, and his expression softened, almost paternal. "When I was about your age," he continued, "I had a lot of questions about God, too. My parents took me to church every Sunday. I'd sit in those pews, staring at the stained glass windows, wondering if God was even listening to me." He paused, his eyes scanning the audience, his hand tapping lightly against the podium. "My father used to tell me that faith is like a ladder. You climb it one step at a time. Sometimes you're scared you'll fall, but you keep climbing because there's something up there worth reaching for." A faint chuckle rippled through the room at his honesty, breaking the tension momentarily. But Lily didn't smile. Her wide, intent eyes stayed locked on him, silently urging him to go deeper. Trump leaned in closer, his voice softening further. As I got older, life threw a lot at me. Losses, failures, moments when I didn't think I could keep going. In those times, I didn't always feel like God was there. Sometimes, I was angry at him. Other times, I thought maybe he'd given up on me altogether. The room was spellbound. This wasn't the Donald Trump they knew. There were no slogans, no bravado, just a man bearing a piece of his soul. But I'll tell you this, he continued, his voice firming. Even in my worst moments when I felt most alone, I realized that faith isn't about always having the answers. It's about believing that even when you can't see the whole picture, there's a purpose. There's something greater at work. He turned his gaze back to Lily. The Bible in her hands now rested more gently, her grip loosened. Her eyes glistened with quiet tears. And God, to me, Trump said slowly, is that purpose. He's the reminder that even when we fall, even when we fail, we're not finished. The room erupted in applause, but Lily's gaze stayed steady, as if silently thanking him for the answer she'd waited so long to hear. Before speaking again, his voice low and deliberate. You see, Trump began, faith isn't just about believing in something bigger than ourselves. It's about understanding that we all have a purpose, even when life feels overwhelming, when the ladder feels like it's going to break under us. We've all been there, haven't we? Questioning whether we're strong enough to climb, wondering if anyone will catch us if we fall. The room was silent, the crowd hanging on to every word. But here's the thing, he continued, his gaze sweeping over the audience. Sometimes it's not about climbing the ladder alone. Sometimes it's about reaching out, steadying each other, and trusting that there's something or someone up there who believes in us more than we believe in ourselves. He turned back to Lily, his expression softened. Your grandma was right, Lily. God is always listening, even when we can't hear him. And sometimes, he speaks to us through moments like this, through you, through all of us. The crowd stirred, their murmurs now filled with a quiet reverence. Lily's mother wiped away a tear, her hand still resting gently on her daughter's shoulder. Lily looked up at Trump, her young face glowing with a newfound sense of purpose. Trump straightened, his tone becoming resolute. We all need reminders like Lily's tonight, that faith, hope, and courage aren't outdated ideals. They're what bind us together, even in our darkest moments. And it's up to us to keep those values alive, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. The room erupted into applause, louder and more fervent this time. People stood, clapping and cheering, their faces illuminated with emotion. Lily hugged her grandmother's Bible tighter, a small but radiant smile breaking through. Trump stepped back from the podium, his face a mixture of humility and determination, as if even he had been moved by the moment. For an evening that began as an ordinary event, it had transformed into something unforgettable. A shared testament to faith, connection, and the courage to ask the questions that truly matter. But carried his faith quietly, like an old, well-worn jacket. Mr. Trump, the man began, his voice deep and steady. What do you do when faith doesn't feel like enough? When the questions just keep piling up and the answers never seem to come? The room grew even quieter, if that were possible. The weight of the question hung in the air, resonating with many who had likely felt the same. Trump studied the man for a moment, his expression thoughtful, before speaking. That's a question I think we've all wrestled with, he said. Faith, my friend, isn't a shield that protects us from pain or doubt. It's more like a compass. It doesn't erase the storms, but it helps us find our way through them. The man nodded slightly, his face still serious but open to the response. There have been times in my life, Trump continued, when I felt like giving up, when the weight of everything, loss, mistakes, regret, felt unbearable. But what I've learned is this: faith isn't just about believing in God, it's about believing in the purpose He's given you. It's about holding on, even when you're dangling by a thread, because you trust the thread is stronger than it looks. The man's gaze softened slightly, his hand lowering. Others in the audience murmured their agreement, nodding at Trump's words. And you don't have to carry that weight alone, Trump added, his voice growing stronger. Look around this room. We're all here because, in one way or another, we're searching for something: hope, understanding, connection. Let each other be your strength when your own faith feels weak. That's the power of community. That's the power of us. The man sat back down, a thoughtful expression on his face. The room erupted into applause again, louder this time, as if the collective energy of the crowd had shifted into something tangible. Lily glanced at her mother, who smiled at her with pride. Trump turned back to the podium, his expression both determined and reflective. Faith, he said, addressing the room, isn't just a private thing. It's what binds us together. It's what reminds us that even in our darkest moments, we're not alone. So to answer your question, when faith doesn't feel like enough, lean on each other. Lean on the strength of those who care about you. And never forget that even when it's hard to see, there's always light ahead. The crowd rose to their feet, a standing ovation filling the room with a sense of unity. Lily smiled softly, her grandmother's Bible still clutched tightly, as if she, too, had found a new sense of hope in the words shared that evening, or in the ways we expect it to. Sometimes it's in the quiet, in the struggle, or even in the questions we're too afraid to ask out loud. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. It's in the way we hold on when everything in us says to let go. It's in the way we reach out to someone else, even when we feel we have nothing left to give. And tonight, he added, his voice softening as his eyes landed back on Lily. It's in a little girl with her grandmother's Bible, reminding us all what courage looks like. Lily's face lit up with a shy smile, and her mother hugged her shoulders tightly. The crowd began to applaud again, not out of politeness, but from a place of genuine emotion, their claps carrying a rhythm of unity and hope. Trump's expression grew introspective as he raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "Let me leave you with this," he said. "Faith, hope, love, these aren't just words, they're actions. They're choices we make every single day, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't make sense. And the most powerful thing about them, they're contagious." He stepped away from the podium slightly, his voice growing more intimate, as though he were speaking to each person individually. What you do here, in this room, in your families, and in your communities, it matters. You don't need a stage, or a microphone, or a crowd to make an impact. Sometimes, the biggest changes start with the smallest gestures. The room was silent, not out of awkwardness, but because everyone was absorbing the moment. The older woman who had spoken about her husband reached for the hand of the man who had asked about struggling with faith. Others glanced at each other, their faces softened with understanding. Trump took a deep breath, his own composure seeming to falter for just a moment before he smiled faintly. "Thank you," he said, his voice resonant, "for reminding me, and maybe all of us, that no matter where we are in life, faith is always within reach." The applause that followed was thunderous, not just in volume, but in meaning. It wasn't just for Trump or for Lily, but for everyone in that room who had dared to be vulnerable, to share, to connect. As the evening came to a close, it was clear that this was no ordinary event. It had become a moment of collective reflection, a rare and precious reminder of what it means to be human, to question, to struggle, to hope, and to believe. This passage beautifully illustrates the power of small, courageous actions and their ripple effect on the world. It begins by highlighting how moments of kindness and bravery, like when someone offers help, listens to pain, or asks a thoughtful question, can remind us of what truly matters. In this story, Lily, a young girl, asks a brave question that captures everyone's attention, including Trump's. His response, usually marked by strength and authority, softens into humility as he speaks about faith. He stresses that faith isn't just something we talk about, it's something we live. When we live it, it spreads to others. Trump uses this moment to challenge the audience, urging them to reflect on what faith means to them. He emphasizes that faith isn't about certainty, but about belief and understanding, and that it has the power to unite us, even amid division. His message resonates deeply, and applause breaks the courage Lily displayed in asking her question. The room becomes emotionally charged as strangers bond over shared experiences, exchanging smiles, stories, and even tears, experiencing a sense of collective hope and unity. As the event comes to a close, Trump approaches Lily and personally thanks her for her courage. He tells her she has more bravery than most adults, reminding her to never lose that strength. Lily, in turn, thanks him with newfound confidence. Her mother, watching her daughter, reflects on how her late grandmother would have been proud of the moment. The story concludes with the realization that sometimes the bravest questions lead to answers that help us discover parts of ourselves we didn't know were missing. It encourages the audience to reflect on their own faith and share it with others, leaving them with a message of hope, unity, and inspiration. This passage reminds us that sometimes it's the small moments, like asking a question, sharing a moment of kindness, or reflecting on our beliefs, that can transform our world and bring us closer together.